There's a workbook that is in your Basecamp space right now. It is from the Indianapolis Neighborhood Resource Center, and it contains little worksheets for doing a lot of things, like how to hold a meeting, how to get opinion, how to do polling, how to go door to door. All kinds of cool things are in this book, and it's there for you anytime you want it. All right, I think
All right.
we're ready to transition, Jonathan. What do you
So,
think? To the
yeah,
next page?
we know we time is present, so we're gonna do this real quick, so don't get overwhelmed. We're gonna take you to this this activity. So we're gonna get right into it. So, for the purpose, we're gonna break into two groups. For the purpose of your small group work, we're gonna assume this is a case study scenario. The assumption here is that all of you are organizers. Congratulations, all 5 of you have been hired as full-time lead community organizers for the People to Save Chicago's organization Right to Development campaign to eliminate TIFs. Right? And you can see that abolish TIFs, flush money. The opposite is the government, it's the government that bill should have gotten the money, replace it with some sort of demand that sends money into needed areas and communities. You've been vetted, hired. You are the TIF elimination lead organizers. You're the ones going to be putting this together and taking this on, right? Congratulations, welcome. So proud of that you made it through the process. All right, so we're going to set up the power matrix exercise, right? We have a team. You're the TIF team, elimination team. You're about to launch and fight for a campaign for the elimination of TIFs and have all the billions of dollars put back into the units of government that service people, right? Okay. And let's say for the purpose of this, it's going to be for the people of Chicago. And so oftentimes, if you can see the usual visual, your team and whoever you're going to be working with in terms of your select group need to come together to do some critical analysis work, right? You got to get together and do some analytics, some analyzing of the work, right? Of the situation. And the purpose for doing this is you have to have a clear understanding of the landscape, right? Of the civic landscape. The policy, the power, the players, everything. You have to have a very clear and solidified position. It's got to be clear, concise of what you want, right? What we want, right? You have to make sure you know who can give you what you want, right? Tom mentioned about targets and language, and you're going to learn about some of the organizing language, right? And that's called the target. And it has to be a human being, okay? And so the reality is not just saying it's the man, you've got to identify those primary and secondary targets. And then you've got to figure out who's likely with you, who's against you, and so forth. So this exercise is called the Power Matrix. It actually comes out of direct action organizing campaigns that have been done by young people, right? They use this Power Matrix to map out and analyze before they went into the campaign to develop and build out the campaign. And to be honest, all campaigns does some form of this. No matter where you go, the group's going to do some type of power matrix where they take on the issues and the systems and the power that be. Okay. Cool. And last and not least, but the power matrix, it's generally done at the beginning of the campaign, and you saw the steps of direct action campaign work. But also, it's a roadmap. So oftentimes you might pause as lead organizers in the middle of the campaign to check in to see where you're at. And the power matrix is a working document, so you could adjust it. It's meant to be used as a living, breathing document, a tool, analytics tool to adjust your campaign strategy and tactics. Cool. And so I don't have that there, but you can go to the power matrix right there, click into it. Set the dashboard, Tom.
Right. So in the chat is the link to Jamboards, and when we go into the small groups in just a few minutes after Jonathan explains what these little sticky notes are, you'll have this on your computer screens. So group 1 will take the first Jamboard, and group 2 will use the second Jamboard, and they're set up already for you. And your tasks will be to create the little sticky notes and place them on the screen according to the instructions. So you'll see the matrix is aligned as follows. The dotted line through the middle signifies agreement and opposition. So if you the more opposed to this thing you think a group is, they're on the far side. The more agreeing with you are with your position the group is that you're going to put on the board, they would go to the left. Up and down has to do with, let's call it impact or power. So you're going to place a sticky note on the top if the group that you're talking about has a lot of power or they're the decision maker themselves. If the group that you're thinking about has no power, they're at the bottom, and so forth. You'll see the legend is on the left, and it's pretty self-explanatory. In the middle, right along the dotted line, would be parties who are neutral, but you place them as according to how much power they have over the situation at hand. Again, at the top, much power, down at the bottom, no power. All right. Here you
Right.
go.
So do me a favor, Tom. Before you go to that, go back to the power matrix screen. And on the left side, I want to make sure it's clear. These definitions are clear. At the bottom, it says no impact, right? And then it goes from there. It says impact on power, public opinion, impact on public opinion, but not on decision. Okay. Going up, then it's impact on public opinion and decision on the left side of the matrix, right? And then at the top, it's at the decision-making level. You're at the table, right? And then at the very top, you are the decision maker. Okay. Okay. Is that clear? On the left and right sides, what's your position? What's your opposition? We're going to take you, I'm going to review the 8 steps. Okay. And then you go into your small groups, and I will drop into each group to help you go. So I'm going to drop in to help each group go through this. Okay. Cool. All right. So thank you, Tom. I got kind of, I didn't have that same slide in mind. So for some reason I have a different deck here. Appreciate that. All right. Cool. The blue notes. Okay. Each of these decisions has it's color coded. Okay. So, okay, I have to go back and forth because they're not set up this way. Okay. So step 1, you're going to decide what your position is about the issue, right? And we kind of alluded to that already in the previous slide about abolishing tips and sort of what do you think about that, right? What's your position about the issue? Okay. Right. And your position is a statement of what you believe the problem is and how it should be solved, and what institution is responsible for solving the problem. Okay. And for each of these steps, we can drop them into the chat as well, the definition of what that step is. Step 2 is decide what the opposition would say about the issue. Right? What would the opposition say about the issue? And as an example, on the issue of ethics studies, for example, this actually came from one of our campaigns in the past, and public education campaigns. The opposition may say the world studies and American history requirements of Chicago public schools already provide students with enough education about racial and ethnic diversity. That's what the opposition said to position, right? To the position. And the position, as the example, was that the Board of Ed needs to create an ethics studies requirement for all high school students that teaches them about the diverse racial and ethnic groups that make up Chicago in order to help combat racism and ignorance, okay? Step 3, decide where your team falls on the power matrix, okay? Right? 4, decide who your allies are. Step 6, decide who the opposition is. Step 7, decide who the neutral parties are. And then step 8, you're gonna have a chance in your team to reflect. And the prompt is if your team's going to change the issue, make the target, solve the problem the way you want it, think about the different players that need to be moved on the power matrix. Okay. It's color coded in your dashboard. If I go there, blue is the target, green is your position, and you can see it's spelled out. Yellow is for allies. Right? You can place your neutral parties along the dotted line in the middle, and the pink is opposition, or pink / purple is opposition, right? And for targets, we'll get to that too. So we already went through the first sort of description, our position, the statement of what we believe the problem is, how it should be solved, and what institution is responsible for solving the problem. That's how you're going to define your position, okay? And the example is there. When you come up with your position, right, you put that in a green Post-it and place it where? On the dashboard, on power matrix. Where do you place it? Top left, right? Green is agreement, right? So you put it on your jam board, your power matrix at the top left corner. That's your position, right? Okay. The opposition, we went through that. You take that opposition and you put it at the top right corner of your jam board, okay? So now you have position on the top left, opposition at the top right. Full agreement, full opposition, right? Everything in between, it's up for grabs. Cool. Step 3, write the name of your team. And because the position we have stated in your team position, it should be noted you go as far to the left as possible on the agreement side, right? Right, full agreement. You all agree with it. So to the left, but then you've got to decide how much power do you have, right? So then you have to go up the scale and figure out where you fall on the left of that power matrix. Do you have no impact? Are you at the decision-making table? Do you impact public opinion, but not decision-making? Do you impact both? You decide where you fall on that scale, okay? Step 4, you then have to decide who the target is. Who's the primary target? That person that's going to change, that can make the change that you want. It's in charge of the institution that you think is primarily responsible for the change, right? You write his or her name on a blue Post-it or however it's set up in the Jamboard, right? Hope the colors match up. I think the color is on the, on the blue Post-it. You're right, good job, T. And then what you do is you place that where? Right? This person makes the decision, right? It should be all the way up on level 5 on the right, top right side, right? So imagine this in your Jamboard 1 through 5. 1, no impact on the right side of the Jamboard, and 5, decision making, right? That person's level 5 decision maker. Then you decide where the target fits on the scale between agreement and opposition with yours. So the assumption is that maybe that person could be in the middle. They make a decision, but maybe they are fully opposed to you, or maybe they're somewhere in between. They're just there at that level of power. Who knows? But you have to decide where they fall. Do they fully agree with you? Do they kind of agree with you? Or are they fully opposed to your position? You place that Post-it note where you think it should fall. You may also add a few more names on pink Post-it notes as secondary targets, right? So we know there's a primary target. We also know how these systems work. There are always secondary targets. People who have to report to the primary target, whose job it is to do the do, and then go back and say, this is what we've done, right? There's always secondary targets. Step 5, on the yellow Post-it notes, write down the name of individuals and groups that you think agree with your position, right? Place them on the power matrix based on how strongly they agree with us and how much power they have to influence the issue, right? Again, Pretty clear, right? Just because I agree with you doesn't mean I have a lot of power to influence the situation. Or I could be a billionaire. I have enough money to make it, and I could be put on more power, depending. But you have to decide. Step 6, on red Post-it notes, write down the name of individuals and organizations that you think disagree with our position. Okay, and that's like the purple red in there, right? And then, of course, they're the opposition. So then you have to decide on the matrix how much power they have to influence the issue. Just because I oppose you doesn't mean I have all the power to actually influence the issue. So you've got to decide how much power that person or group have. Be specific in terms of the people or groups. Step 7, you have a whole set of people in the neutral area. 80 to 90% of people are actually in the middle in many respects. Think of powerful individuals and groups that do not have a position on the issue. Write these names on uncolored post-it notes and put them in their neutral cause, place them in the center of the power matrix based on how much power they have to influence the issue. And then finally, step 8, you're going to have a conversation once you finish your matrix. And this is your prompts. How do you increase your team's power? That's critical. How do you increase your allies' power? If you increase your allies' power, most likely you'll get increased power. How do you move neutral players over to your position? You're always about recruiting, right? And organize. You always try to get people to win them over to your side of the situation. And then also, how do you decrease the power of the opposition or move them closer to your position? Oftentimes it's all resistance, but people forget sometimes it's about getting them, right, the opposition, to actually join you and take your position as much as possible. And then how can we move the target to agree with our position? Primary target at some point, can you convince them or not? Right? And if you can, that's huge. Excellent. All right. And then after that, you'll report back on your share out. So be prepared to share out your findings. You should have the power matrix in there. And any questions? So groups are going to report back on where they are with the steps and share some reactions. I want to, and we'll take, so group 1. Got your Jamboard pulled up. Everybody can pull the Jamboard for them to look at themselves. So what step did you get to, group 1, or get through? And then share us how you felt about it, whatever it is. Jump in.
Okay, so at first we thought it was a little bit challenging, but then once we got into it, we kind of got the ball rolling. So I think we got a pretty good start. So for the first step, for our position, we said TIFs must be abolished because money collected from them does not funnel back into the communities which actually pay for them. And they must be replaced by a program that has visibility and allows for true economic development. And we said that it is Mayor Lori Lightfoot's duty to rectify this oversight. And so the opposition was a little bit harder for us because, we think TIFs are so bad that we can't really see how anyone would really try to argue it. But we just had to say that they would argue that TIFs are needed to keep the budget stable and that they are used for economic development. And then,
excellent.
But Wyatt, in your first statement,
yeah,
who's the target?
Keep going,
Lori Lightfoot.
Yeah, he said that.
Good. I just want to call it out.
And then so for the targets, we had Lori Lightfoot, and we said we put her in the middle because she had high hopes, or so that people had high hopes for her that she would reform them or change them in some way. But she has attempted to tighten the rules permitting funds from the TIF districts that are used to subsidize private development, but she hasn't gone far enough for the activists that she vowed to work with months ago. So we put her as the highest decision maker and neutral in the middle. And then we also had aldermen and city council members down there as well.
Okay, that's where you got to, step 3.
Yep.
How did it feel?
Feel like it's not that hard to look this stuff up and kind of realize like what's actually going on, but it's so important because it's kind of incredible that they even exist, and it's kind of like insane that people thought that would be a good idea, and they definitely need to get rid of them already.
Why? How did you feel in terms of the process of doing step 1 through 3? And you too, Celia, I want to hear how you what was going. How did it feel to actually?
Well, I think we were both a little bit nervous at first because we weren't sure exactly what to do, but then once we got it rolling, I think it it felt pretty good. It was to me it felt like I learned a lot in just a short time. But Cecilia, do you want to chime in on anything?
Yeah, I felt like at first I was very confused, but I got a handle of it pretty quick and establishing obviously the position of abolishing TIFs, and I felt pretty good, pretty passionate about it. I also added too for like our allies, I kind of added in on the side like other organizations in support of social change, maybe possibly some other politicians that would also be in support of abolishing TIFs.
Cool. And so just real quick on that one, some of the confusion was on our end, so we apologize for that, but we'll address that in a second. Two, in doing a power matrix, it's always good to even drill down. You got the groups, but then drill down to the individuals of the institutions and the names, people in place, people in groups, right? Which groups, which people are your allies? And have that conversation. Because then it really makes it person to person. Excellent. Thank you guys. Great report back. Let's jump to the second group. Group 2, thank you guys. Group 2, you're on. How far did you get in terms of the step process and how did it feel? Jump in. Eli or Lucas, there's only 2 of you here still.
Well, I just had to run downstairs, but basically we identified that, of course, the TIFs take money away from programs that benefit minorities and impoverished communities and give it to the wealthy. That was in the top left.
Cool. Any opposition? What does the opposition say to it?
I'm sure that would be the real estate developers, the wealthy, the people who are trying to benefit off of developing.
So what would be their position? You talk it out. It's in your dashboard, top right corner, pink.
That it would provide job opportunities for individuals.
Development, job opportunities, right? Huge. You know, this is going to help develop the economy, the local economy. Absolutely. And then in terms of the targets, you get to the targets yet? Who do you think the targets are?
Possibly certain areas in Chicago or just certain areas in general. So maybe the lower poverty areas or the areas that don't have the same amount of resources.
Okay, so that would be areas where you want the money to go to. But in terms of who, remember the target is the person who can make the decision to get you what you want. So who would be the primary target from your perspective in terms of being able to say, I agree with you, I'm going to support your position. I'm going to make it happen. Who's that decision maker? All right, just jump. Okay, don't have to ask a question. Just say what you think. The mayor.
Probably the mayor.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that's where. So a couple things. And the power matrix is specific as possible. Be clear, right? And to be frank and brutally honest, a power matrix for a campaign could take a whole 2 or 3 days, depending on where you're at and where your team is at in terms of the research. Lots of research. Lots of data collection. There's a time of research and data collection that you got to do even before you even start a power matrix. All right, so how did you 2 feel? Eli, Lucas, how did it feel?
I mean, it's nothing that we haven't already heard already, but it is kind of interesting seeing it mapped out and more visualized than we would otherwise.
Cool. Lucas, for you, what do you think?
Yeah, I also agree with that. Just being able to do an activity like this with the information that we're receiving throughout these training sessions, I think is really beneficial for us just to have these types of conversations. So yeah, it's positive for sure.
Cool. Excellent. All right, cool. So again, we just gave you, usually in this training, you would have the whole time to get through all 8 steps, have more of a robust conversation. But I think you get the idea. Right, this is a snapshot into an actual campaign, but you can tell how much already. Just even step 1, step 2, what it has to take to actually get through this processing, this analyst processing of building out your matrix. Cool, awesome. So, what we're gonna do, one of the things that we'll do is we're gonna put the power matrix handout into the Basecamp full handout with the descriptions and everything. And what we can do, there's gonna be two things happening for your homework. I'm adding this first part of your homework for next week. We're gonna start talking about campaigns. So each of you, and I'll put the instructions to, each of you is gonna have to choose a ward. If you live in a ward, obviously if you're not in a ward, go look at the ward map and choose a ward and assume that you're living in that ward, okay? Chicago. And you're gonna identify your alderman, who that person is. You're gonna do some research, and these links will be provided for you. Tom, you wanna go through it?
All right, so this is already in Basecamp in the folder for the next presentation. So here's your assignment. If you live in Chicago, you will select the ward that you live in, and you have to know what ward that is. If you are not living in Chicago, you will pick a ward from 1 to 50. It's on you, take one. They're all spicy and interesting. The first thing you do is you're going to look up the margin of victory for the current alderman. So there were elections in 2019. So we are, like 2 years into the current term of the people who are serving justice here in the city of Chicago, the mayor and the council. What is the margin of victory for alderman? So if it's Tom Tresser versus Jonathan Peck, how did it break out? What were the top 5 campaign contributors to the winner? And the link is provided also for you to answer that question. We also have posted the rubber stamp analysis. So if Tom Tresser is the incumbent alderman, you have to look into that document and characterize me. Am I a rubber stamp? Am I somewhat oppositional, or am I extremely oppositional to Mayor Lightfoot? How did Mayor Lightfoot, at that time, candidate Lightfoot do against candidate Preckwinkle in the ward? Again, that's all there for you at the Board of Elections. And what can you tell us about the incumbent? So my incumbent right here, I'm in the 43rd ward. My alderman is Michelle Smith. I have to look up, I have to tell you a little bit about her bio. How does she roll? Is she a strong ally of the mayor? Is she independent? Is she a troublemaker? So that's a little creative research online for you. A couple of sentences, really. And then your thinking about what you've just learned about this person. Are they vulnerable for defeat in the 2023 elections? And each of you will have a few minutes to present your findings to the full group at our next. Okay, to close out our action-packed session on community organizing, I present to you one of America's most accomplished organizers, Heather Booth, reading a very appropriate poem.
Poem called The Low Road by Marge Piercy, a wonderful Jewish poet and novelist. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can do anything you can't stop them from doing. How can you stop them? Alone, you can fight back. You can refuse. You can take what revenge you can, but they'll roll over you. But 2 people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. 2 people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. 3 people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With 4, you can play bridge and start an organization. With 6, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. A dozen make a demonstration. 100 fill a hall. 1,000 of solidarity in your own newsletter. 10,000 power in your own paper. 100,000 your own media. 10 million your own country. It goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again. And they said no. It starts when you say we, and you know who you mean, and each day you mean one more.